Towards the end of his speech, Biden praised and thanked Vice President Kamala Harris for being an incredible partner and a leader of the country.
In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country.
Biden also pledged to work towards ending the war in Gaza and bringing home Americans held in prisons around the world.
We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific. You know, when I came to office, the conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. That's not the case anymore. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war. We're also working around the clock to bring home Americans being unjustly detained all around the world.
And let's now bring a comprehensive analysis to Biden's speech. And for this, I'm joined by DD India correspondent Benji Haya, who's joining us from Washington. A very good morning from India, Benji. Now, Joe Biden has presented himself as a martyr, saying that he's sacrificing for the sake of unity in democracy. How well would this go with the Republicans as well as the Democrats, considering the upcoming presidential elections, Benji?
It's gone exactly as you've suspected so far, at least. The reactions that have come in from the upper echelons of the political world here in Washington, from lawmakers, from officials on either side, is praise from Democrats, even from those that were behind the scenes trying to force Joe Biden to withdraw his 2024 bid. Whilst on the other hand, you have Republicans scorning at Joe Biden, some calling for him to resign the presidency entirely. You have Donald Trump yet to make official comment, watching Joe Biden's speech whilst finishing a speech of his own on the campaign trail in North Carolina. And so I think you're going to see a very partisan approach when it comes to this issue, as with most issues in the United States. In terms of how Joe Biden's speech is taken by voters, I mean, the content of it was no surprise. We knew those would be coming. I think many Americans are fixed in their ways. I'm sure that plenty will appreciate the stoic, somber, sobering tone that Joe Biden took, and the scale at which he says America's democracy is at stake, even though many people would dismiss that suggestion. I think that what Americans might wanted more of is answers into how Joe Biden came to this decision so recently, following weeks of insisting that he was fit enough to run for office. Why now the sudden change to try to pass that torch to a new generation? There was talk, of course, of giving the mantle to a younger, fresher, newer face, but no talk really of the mental acuity of a president that still has to serve 6 more months in the Oval Office.
And also, Benji, in his stoic and somber tone, he's shown a lot of confidence in Kamala Harris. Whereas if you talk about Donald Trump, he says that it is even easier to defeat Kamala Harris. Will this take an interesting turn, or will this become an even weaker fight for Biden and his party, Benji?
Well, whoever the nominee is, and it's not officially Kamala Harris, although technically she has enough delegates to become the nominee, is going to face a very fierce competition. But there is hope within the Democratic Party that Kamala Harris can bring new invigoration, energy to a campaign that had stalled under Joe Biden, who was losing the confidence of vast swathes of the American people. It's too early to say from polls to indicate how this decision is going to massively sway the American population. It'll certainly change the course of the campaign, though. The messaging, the revitalization, the focus on now different parts of the country. And the next major step is Kamala Harris deciding her vice presidential candidate, who will go up against J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate. So this has totally transformed the political situation here in the United States, and it seriously opens up this election, which is already very tightly fought.
Talking about force, he's also given a lot of hope to the people. Biden said that there is no place in America for political violence or any other violence, referring to failed assassination attempt on Trump. Can we say that, Benji?
Well, he did mention Donald Trump by name, but obviously that is the lingering event that has hung over the past week and a bit of American politics. An event, an incident, a shooting that was immediately condemned by Joe Biden and the rest of the Democratic Party and the rest of the administration. I think there is a general call from the president to take down the tone of the campaign, to lower the temperature, and now in his sort of elder statesman status, less campaigner, more statesman, he'd be able to try to continue sending that message about avoiding political violence, avoiding other types of gun violence. He spoke about trying to counter gun violence in the United States and a number of other focuses that he will continue to press during his remaining time in the Oval Office in relation to civil rights and in relation to foreign policy as well. But he has to try to convince the American public that he is up for the job. Why, for example, if you feel that you cannot do 4 more years, do you really feel that you can even manage 6 more months?
And also, Benji, when we talk about Biden's speech, he called for Supreme Court reform, but this is taking many analysts by surprise. Why so? And can this actually backfire Harris's bid for November election?
This has been a real contentious issue in the United States. The Supreme Court, the kind of third wing of the US government, there's the legislature, Congress, there is the executive, the White House, there is the judiciary, the Supreme Court, which on the Constitution is an apolitical body, but in past years has become tied to politics inherently, especially now with the current makeup, which weighs heavily in favour of conservative values and the sort of policies that Donald Trump would like to espouse. Trump himself, a beneficiary of a recent Supreme Court ruling which gives him immunity over certain acts taken in office. Now Joe Biden wants to try at least to expand the court to make sure that it doesn't become so weighted politically. That is going to be very, very difficult to try to do that with his remaining time in office. But ultimately, when it comes to trying to set a legacy and a path forward, he wants to try to begin that process, at least one which will likely be opposed by his critics, but one which is welcomed, I'm sure, by many Democrats who feel that their plans are being shafted by justices at the Supreme Court.
A very quick and last question, which is very important also, Benji. Joe Biden has also taken this opportunity to lay out the promises, focusing on his aim to end the war in Gaza, continue his rally to support Ukraine, and he also said that it is the time for the youth to raise their voices and more. Now, pointing to the high points of his current presidency and then he bowing down, how do you look at all the promises considering the upcoming presidential election, Benji?
Look, I think it's twofold. This is an effort to try to protect his legacy more widely, but it is also an effort to sell the idea to the American people that his presidency is still worth continuing. And the way to do that is to rest on some of those achievements, trying to, he says, at least dig the United States out of the hole post-pandemic, trying to unify the country in the aftermath of the attack on the US Capitol 2021, the heart of American democracy, his battles on climate change, his efforts to avoid conflict around the world, pointing to that and saying, look, I still can do the job. Here's my record to show it. But ultimately, whoever his successor is will face an enormous in-tray of issues which are unlikely to be satisfied in the next 6 months and will roll over to the next administration, those domestic challenges and foreign policy too. His aim is to get those at least rolling. And I think ultimately the bottom line is for the president, these issues are important, yes, but there is a wider thing at stake here, and that is the American democracy itself. That is on the ballot, he says, come November.
All right. Thank you so much, Benji, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on Biden's speech in the early hours of Thursday.